So I'm going to start with the question of precarity. This is how do you and your work move through our increasingly precarious times?
I think when we talk about precarity, we can think about how it's some sense of the world, some sense of the reality that it's today, but as we were talking about now, it's something that we as subaltern populations, we experienced through the history. And talking about Brazil specifically, I would say that our precarity now, it's related to being alive or to die. So we have a state of death. How can I engage my body, which is my space to live, which is my state of being alive. So what I've been producing as dance, as performance, as theory, it's pretty much related to that emergent state, the state of death, and we as artists, we as Black women artists or artists, we are trying to confront and to create answers against this state of death, this state of brutality.
For me, precarity really speaks of a state of in-betweenity, a state of suspense, a state of not finding ground. And for me, it's very much linked to nature. And in a lot of the work that I've been working on most recent times is site-specific work in areas that are historically has resonance of brutality, and the ways in which to kind of reclaim, to remember how to treat the earth, how to occupy these spaces again, to recognize that, it is not okay to chop down a mapu tree or a ceiba or a baobab or any of the other trees, and doing work in trees so that we could remember that it vibrates with its energy, it vibrates with its own matrika, its own utterance, which carries sacred knowledge and power, and also inhabiting the space of the ocean as sites and water, as sites of not only the passage and the crossing, but those spaces that hold so much of our mysteries, so much of our ancestral heritage. I mean, when we think about it, the first cemetery was the first graveyard, was the bottom of the ocean. And so what does it mean to go into that ocean as a dancing body, to pay homage to ground, to unite with all of the sacred waters that unites all of these systems, these religious systems, and linking that through the sweet and the saline.
Puerto Rico is undergoing depopulation and what seems like a systematic disappearance of Puerto Rican life on many fronts. And Bomba, in its most recent iterations of the last 20 years or so, has provided not just a space for looking inward, but provided the structures to care for each other and to listen to each other and to provide networks of bringing supplies and connectivity and getting people water, getting people food at a very most basic level, and also in terms of a diaspora, in terms of like in the places outside of the island, the care that's been able to, through Bomba networks and communities of belonging, that has come back to the island, and that has turned back towards that. So that is I think beyond the kind of artistic practices that it also produces, there is a very kind of material care that is produced through the knowledge that Woma gives us.
I think of this term precarity in the particular socio-political moment that we're in, I think, in the entire world. And when I look at the rise of fascism, of more brutality, of women's voices against the brutality against us in so many ways, it just feels like in some ways we're going backwards. But I always have to look at my ancestors and what they went through. And that lets me know that if they could have survived for me to be here today through what they went through, the Middle Passage, the hundreds of years of enslavement, that I have no choice but to move forward with dignity and to fight and struggle and to keep that going, so that what we know about life, as opposed to the death that surrounds us, will live on to struggle another day. I also have to turn to one of my mentors, Catherine Dunham, who taught us that the integration of mind, body, and spirit can get you through anything. That the stability that I have learned in terms of who I am as a human being in the world, as a Black woman in the world, no one can touch that. No one. That is a power greater than any other power that exists. And we have to remember that. We have to remember the power that we have, the spiritual power that we have. And so these precarious times, they too shall pass.
Mm-hmm. I try to speak in English, but you must know my English is very bad. If you not understand, Mario to help me, okay? Precarity is very important because I come from Guadeloupe. It's a little island, and the history of Caribbean island, English or Spanish or French, it's colonization and slavery. That is a chaos. Okay, it's destability. Yes. It's because one person decide another person is not a person. Mm-hmm. My reality is all the time is precarity because my land is imprevisibility by the nature. Mm-hmm. And I think like of dance, for example, in Guadeloupe is Groka, Martinique is Belay, Haiti is Vaudou, Puerto Rico is Bomba. We have one gesture, foundation gesture is it's chaos. Chaos, excuse me. It's chaos. It's out of balance. It's but in Guadeloupe, when I observe this dance, I think the dance is a solution for the world now, because the dancer never to fall. He received a chaos. He received imprevisibility, destruction, but he never to fall. That is a philosophy, and I think the little island and Caribbean island maybe to learn the human. Don't forget you have a power inside, in deep your body, your spirit. Don't afraid. you it's necessary to fall, but don't stay on down. Go up. Maybe you are not verticality. That is a big continent, harmony and comment on dit équilibré, equilibrium. No, that is not life. Okay, I'm finished.
Just to follow Lena, we are in the Caribbean. I'm from Haiti, and precarity for me, it's like it's you have your right hand and your left hand. So Haitian, we consider that Haitian are the right hand and precarity is the left hand. So we have to cohabit. Yeah. So that's and yes, coexist, and it's a powerful source because when you have precarity, you are really paying attention about everything, and it's help you to be conscious about everything. Like for example, we had some trouble in Haiti and we were locked. We realized at this moment that how everything is important. You don't have to
Waste.
Yes. Yeah. You learn to not waste. Okay. You learn to not waste in everything. Even if it's water, even if it's bread, whatever. And if for example, I say to a friend, "Oh, let's go to the market." No, we have to save gas because we don't know when the gas pump will be open to be, to be full. Though it's really, I think that maybe we should be in precarity to really give importance and to have a certain balance between your neighbor, and you and your country, you and your space, you and yourself also. And also from an artist, it's really important to be in precarity because it's a real good source of inspiration and creation. And as an artist, you will never know how helpful is precarity for you. Thank you.
What I think is the theme of a lot of what everyone is saying, which is precarity as potential almost. Like I see it as when you think about ritual, about moving from one stage to the other, and the fact that there's this liminal, precarious space that you move through. And that, if you seize that opportunity and you seize the power of that space, then there's potential to, rewrite and rescript and reinvent yourself for something new. But then there's also this opportunity to look back and remember the heritage, of resilience and resistance that you've received, and bring those two things together. I think is the power of that space for me as an artist.
What I'm hearing is that there's certain philosophical elements from these embodied systems that make it possible for Black diasporic communities to survive and live. Right? It's not just about not just aesthetics, but from these philosophies, cosmologies, ways of thinking about yourself and the world that are transmitted through the body is part of what we can learn from and draw from to continue living. And thinking, this brings to the question about pedagogy, because it's also about these ways of knowing each other in the world cannot be extricated from this context in which we live, the kind of living conditions within which these dances have been practiced and passed on. So I want us to think about the context in which we have learned these forms, and alongside the context in which we now teach these dance forms. So what is it, what kind of pedagogical approaches or philosophies are we drawing from, or can we reflect upon? And then what kind of pedagogical approaches or philosophies have we had to develop because of the context in which we are asked now to teach these embodied systems? And what does that mean for the way we know these embodied systems of knowledge? So
I want to jump in just because it's a world I dwell in a little bit. As an initiate in many different systems, my practice, my creative practice is steeped in the sacred. And it's steeped in the sacred that cuts across multiple systems, whether it's Yoruba, whether it's Bantu, whether it's, and as a result, it also crosses geographical locales. So when they speak of the coro, or your chorus of ancestry, we often think of our bloodline being the only source, and that's just one source. We attract many different energies to us, and they may be from various parts of the universe. And so my entry, because of being a medium, being able to communicate and be a portal for the divine from about 8-9 years old, and that being a part of my life and conditioning, I was always in spaces of being first exposed to movement as a way to communicate with the divine. So the body became the portal through which conversation, communion happens. And so that teaching was always done in a collective enterprise. It was always it was always done in an antiphonal or call and response way. And there were moments when you had to know when to fall back and when to move forward. And in those lessons from 8 to 9 and beyond were the first teachings of discernment. How do you discern presence? And these are subtle things that aren't as easy to translate in a studio space where I teach many of these dances, because it is the coming, the marriage, and we don't always have that in a studio space where you could marry the drum and the sound and the movement and the accoutrements all together to create that harmonious moment where everything fits in. And so in my own pedagogy is really stepping back to that space of quiet and showing more than anything else respect. And recognizing that these systems are well beyond our years, and they will continue well beyond that. And to also recognize that not all things need to be known, and not all things need to be or ought to be taught. And being respectful of what are those things that could enter into the public domain. They were kept secret for a reason, and we have to be respectful of that. Yeah. And so what do you bring from the inside out, and what do you keep inside? And really being able to impart this to teach, because what happens is that you are a teacher, but you're imparting this knowledge, and then that person may bring it out. And if they don't have the foundation that undergirds what all of this means, you're calling energies that you don't know how to manage, right? And so that it's a real responsibility then, in terms of you're awakening things, right? So this whole conference, and even in so-called secular spaces, we opened with libation and a procession yet there's no space for the ancestors or the entities to land. There's no altar here. There's no space. So we have all these spirits roaming around, and all they need to do is find a portal, right? So we had this festive moment yesterday, and the energy is building, and it came to a moment where, whoa, there are just too many of them now. And if you don't find a place for them to land, then that's where the chaos, which is generative in moments. It's generative only when there's someone who could guide that energy. Without that guiding, it could get chaotic and dangerous, precarious in a way that is no longer productive, right? And I think as persons who dwell in the space of the sacred and try and bring these teachings to recognize respect above all else, but everything that opens also must close.
Just in terms of philosophy and pedagogy, and what I've been thinking to build my work. Philosophically, I think the Africanist ways to think about body and talk about this other world that it is implied in our existence as body. So this is something that the Africanist perception gave me tools to deal with in the classroom. How can I engage my body, understand my body, and understand my movement, knowing that I'm not just this physical person. Nobody is. And thinking about pedagogy, what really interested me is the possibility to talk about autonomy. I'm very much influenced by Paulo Freire pedagogy, the pedagogy of autonomy, which I think when we learn to dance, when we learn to know our history, when we learn to understand that I need to bring my inside history to build my dance, this is about autonomy. This is about to be able to speak to the world with a kind of efficiency, because I know from where I am.
For me, pedagogy is it's very important. Now, after 30 years ago, I transmit my own dance or dance. I observe, comment on dit arme, une arme.
Like a weapon?
Ouais, la danse peut être une arme pour changer les esprits.
Like a weapon.
I observe the dance, the art of dance, like a weapon for transformation the mind. It's very important, particularly for Caribbean people, but more I travel, more I observe for black people. And now my pedagogy, it's a weapon, really weapon, to try to explain girls, women, child, men, you stop it the gaze with between white and black. We stop it the gaze. I believe with a big conviction, because me, I decide I stop it. I'm my experience, my dance. If I am here in forward view, yes, front view, it's why I stop it. I never considered I'm black or I'm island paradise, etc. That's your problem. It's not my problem. Okay? And when because the air we have a discussion with Luciane. I observe in Guadeloupe, everywhere. For example, I have a class with a little child, 4 years ago, 6, 7, very young. Oh, I clap the hand and I tell them, oh, when I clap the hand, 2 by 2. Each time, we are 2021. Yes, yeah. 2021. Each time for my generation, but now we see the white child, the black child, one for why? It's why the dance is for me is not only beautiful gesture or energy or enjoy. No, it's weapon for me, and weapon for the white people, for green people, yellow people, because the dance, and I think it's why for the history. They decide by the code noir, the black code, decide to stop it, the dance, because the dance is very, very strong.
Oh, yes.
It's a power.
Yeah.
And I think through the dance, you have the possibility to change the world. I'm really believe that.
Yes.
Okay, I'd just like to piggyback a little bit on what Lena was saying. I think what she's talking about is using dance pedagogy for critical thinking to get people past the surface images, stereotypes, the ways in which we've been taught the world hierarchical system exists, and to get our students to really begin to think for themselves. And that's what my aim is, no matter whether I'm teaching a lecture course or a dance course, is getting my students to go within and begin to find their own truth within themselves. And I think dance gives us a real methodology to be able to accomplish that way of critically thinking beyond what the world says, what the media says, what the images that are coming to us are all about, but beginning to think about what it is that we really see in the world, who we are really becoming, and getting our students to embrace that and to be comfortable with that, because when you do embrace critical thinking, you are going to be off balance, and you're going to learn how to constantly play with that off balance and getting back into balance. So I really see that we have an opportunity in our pedagogy in all these mechanisms through dance, through the African diaspora, to really engage critical thinking that, again, will challenge that overall sense of social political power that I was talking about before, for people to find their own inner power, to think for yourself.
I'm coming from a country that we start learning by, recitation.
Rote memorization.
Yes, thank you. Rote memorization. So you have to remember everything.
Part of the colonial
And-
legacy.
Yes.
When you are at school, you have to memorize everything. And memorize everything, it's about, if you don't memorize, you will not get an example. If I don't memorize the A point to the Z point, I will not be able to pass the exam. So that's the way we've grown like that. So now, how to ask
how to ask a child to be like, out of this kind of pedagogy. Memorizing everything, from A to Z, it's not that easy. I remember one day I have a nephew, and I was working with him in a math exercises, and we had a bad time because I didn't have the same result as the teacher. So it's become like a problem. No, it's not what the teacher said. No, the teacher maybe makes a mistake. No, it's not what the teacher said. So it was like a fight. So finally, I just said to him, okay, maybe the teacher has made a mistake. Come back to the teacher and said that you were working with your auntie, and that's what you found. And he just came back home and said, you were right, because the teacher realized that he had, so sometimes pedagogy, it's a kind of difficult. Surtout.
Above all, yeah.
Yes, especially when you have,
Especially.
especially for kids, because they are like a sponge. Yes, they are like sponge, so they captured everything that you put in. For now it's like it's become, more. We can like share, because in the time, back to the time, you are here, you just have to keep everything that they give to you without asking any question. You just absorb, and go home. But now, now it's becoming different, because we are trying to be open. But it's not that easy becoming open, because sometimes they take the open like you are boring. You are not trying to buy because you are asking a lot of questions. So it's a kind of struggle, because you have to find a balance between those, those kind of situations. So it's a little different for me. So, for now, kids are very intelligent. It's not they were not in the past. No. Now, I don't know, it's because of internet. So they become very curious now. But now it's a little different. We are trying to be like in connection with the kids, but we have another problem, because when you teach something and when they go back home, they discuss with parents, it's another thing, a struggle with parents, kids, and the professor and the teacher. So that's why I say pedagogy for me, it's a little complex. It's really, you have to deal with it. You have to find the right word to make the kids understand what you're trying to teach him. But at the same time, you have to be able to make a balance between, to not really confuse the kids between his parents, the teacher, and itself. So that's my point of view. It's a little complex.
The rare moment of having this table of women sitting here is and it kind of works with the pedagogy and all the precarity and all the things that you're saying. Like it's as a Black female artist myself and moving into being a scholar, there is an absence of this voice. I think there's a type of question that's always asked, this kind of question that's connected to everything is terrible, that kind of plants us in a place of living in that place of living in the terrible and not embracing our profundity to develop new everything, pedagogies, way of moving in the world, Jawale did something about that where she had nationwide all the black choreographers come together, black female choreographers, and it's like even though in funding they want to fund black suffering. You know what I mean? And all of this, and I'm not saying this not to fully recognize the state of Puerto Rico, of Haiti. These states are real. However, I do think in terms of energies, you keep an energy stuck in that place by you living in it, creating work in it, and I think is doing something to our brand. I'm not saying I think these artists are the bomb, but I'm saying because we are all here together talking, I just wanted to put that on the table.
Right. I think that like that speaks to, you know, kind of the idea of the slave mentality, the colonial mentality. You know, I think that like what you're talking about is kind of the effects, the success of colonialism, the success of slavery, and the very subtle and ingenious ways that it keeps perpetuating, right? So that your funding is, you know, coming from your suffering, or your, you know, there are all these like different examples that I feel like I heard of this time around of that example, you know, and for me right now, and what African dance has done, my practice of African dance has done for my life, you know, has been to decolonize my mind, you know, to decolonize my body, the way that I see, the way that I move through. I feel like the tools that I have received from, you know, getting that back into my life, because as a Zimbabwean in apartheid Zimbabwe, I didn't have access to my own culture, right? I was told that it wasn't good, it was hedonistic, it was this and this and this, and so the way that I was raised in Zimbabwe had nothing to do with the culture until I came to America, and I saw that, oh, people are dancing and there are African dances, and I started training in African dance once I got here. And you know, I think it's a slow and long process of shedding those lies from your being, but that the result of it is just the most exhilarating and positive and joyous, and that's, you know, kind of the celebration that I feel like I want to move towards, you know, being expressive of that, you know, more in my life. So yeah, thank you for those words.
And I think about the reprise that so many of these dances have, or someone in our own creation, that moment where we could bring it back to start again.
Yeah, to bring back. Yeah.
So even when we're in resistance and in struggle and in that space of transformation and revolution, we always have that moment to exhale, to smile, to make that connection. Joy holds a very important space, a really intimate, visceral space, I think, in our work, but also in the traditions in which we find anchor. Joy emanates. You know, so when I know the first conversations around Afro-pessimism, is that it? And these things, we couldn't understand it in the Jamaican context, in the Trinidadian context. We couldn't understand, what do you mean by that? Because yes, our lives are hard. It's hard, but with that sense of we're going to take that on as our label. No. The circumstance is hard, but not our spirits. We're triumphant. We're resilient, even amidst the hardness. Because if we stay hard, the cradle of our pelvis can't move. And once that stops moving, life can't move.
That's right.
So if you're stiffening everything in that hardness and in that struggle, life ends. Joyous joy.
In the South, here in the U.S., there was a phrase called "Gimme the knee bone bent." Gimme the knee bone bent. You bend your knees, your pelvis has freedom. You straighten your legs and you're like you're dead. You're stiff. You bend, you lower your center of gravity, that pelvis moves and life begins.
We're on the floor, we reconnect.
Yeah, so give me the knee bone bent, always. I think of all of this as, when I think of this whole aspect of Afro-Feminist performance, it takes me back to the divine, because when I access the divine from an Africanist perspective, I know the power of Black feminism. I know the power of Oya. I know the power of Yemaya. I know the power of Oshun, who laughs at it all. The power of the feminine divine is powerful. And that's what they wanted to keep us from ultimately in this colonial world. We have to rid ourselves of the slave mentality, and we have to access our birthright. Our birthright is that feminine divine. And so there is no, in our African religious traditions, there is no Father God. There's always Father Mother. There's always the feminine with the masculine. There is always this sense of balance and reciprocation. Baba, yeah.
That's a perfect transition to the question of feminism and how the Afro-feminine or the Afro-feminist operates in your embodied practice.
I do not identify as an Afro-femme, but I identify as the descendant of Afro-femmes. And I mean that both literally in terms of ancestral lines and people that sit with me in my work, but also in terms of that which I and we are indebted to, and the labors of Afrofeminism and the many Afro-femmes that come before. And I was talking with Dasha yesterday about literally like a machete, just getting it out of the way so that we can be aligned to those sacred teachings and to our sacred purposes. So that's how I position myself.
For me, the labels I don't really use. The discourse that is, they're loaded, they're hyper loaded. But being woman positions me in to respect all. As cradle of life, but also, and whatever life that form that takes, whether it's in the artwork, whether it's in the bearing of fruit of a child or the bearing of a staging of something, but balance, and the feminine is divine for me, yes, but it's also, I see myself as woman always in relation to man. And that duality, and not necessarily male, female, but the energetic force, that the cosmic egg is aligned by these different energies, however they're inhabited, in whatever body they're inhabited in, but that those energies of the feminine and the masculine, of the positive and the negative, come together in a whole. Hi, Bobo.
That, I think we will then close out of respect for time.
Thank you.
Conversation